Figuring out your finances. So the main idea we've been talking about finances is to give some really practical advice, because finances, talking about money, is a cause of so much stress and complication for many, many people. And of course, none of you have that problem, but we're going to talk about it anyway so you can help somebody who does struggle. And so just going back through figuring out your finances. Go ahead, Gabriel. We're using the material from the Ron Blue Institute. And Ron Blue is like an expert. He built a great business. He has a great reputation. Online, his stuff is all in English. But if you speak English, he has lots of little videos, little short videos, little things that give some great advice. He's an accountant. He's not a celebrity. He's not very entertaining. But his advice is really great. And he's super respected as a Christian, giving a perspective on how to manage your finances. And so Ron Blue Institute, and that's where we're borrowing his information. So the first thing that we talked about was having one perspective. When you talk about money, there's so many things people can say, but really we're talking here about starting with one perspective. And that perspective, you remember what it is? God owns it all. At the end of the day, like the scripture says, came into the world with nothing, and when you go out, you take nothing with you. God is the owner. And so our perspective is to say, how is my heart? How do I think? What do I really believe about stewardship or administration? Am I an administrator of the things that I have, or do I have it because I'm somebody special? And so as soon as we understand I'm just an administrator, all that I have could be taken, and all that I have has been given, that changes everything. What does it mean to be content? What does it mean to demonstrate faith? How do I make wise decisions? So we talked about that. You can go online and listen to that talk, or you can write me. I'll send you the notes. Go ahead, Gabriel. And so then we talked about 5 principles. 5 basic principles, and they start with one principle. And if you get the first one wrong, nothing else will work. And so the first one is that you have to consistently spend less than you earn. If you don't do that, there's no way out of troubled times ahead. The trouble is waiting if you consistently spend more than you earn. I think that's fairly simple, but it's amazing how many people are not really aware of how much they're earning or where the money comes from, and so we just spend it and hope for the best. And so the first habit was right there in the middle, these habits. And these habits can change your life. This is not about having a lot or a little. Get that out of your mind. We think, well, I don't have very much money, that's why I struggle. Or that person has lots of money, that's why it's easy. Managing money is not about if you have a lot or a little. It's about how you think and what your habits are. And so the things that we do comes out of the way that we think, the way that we believe. And so if we're in a hard place, I'm going to keep repeating it today, we've got to change the way that we think. And we have to look at it and say, hey, how did I get into this difficult spot? And so then the second habit is the next easiest thing in the world, but we don't do it. And it's avoid the use of debt. If you've got economic stress in your life, the first thing you need to do is figure out how much money you can count on in a month or 2 months or 2 weeks, and start spending less. And then start eliminating some debt. And then making a plan and setting some goals and giving generously. So we talked about that and spent a good bit of time on that. We said there's only 4 purposes. So last week I talked about the 5 habits and the 4 purposes. And there's 5 things in that circle, but they're really, it's easy to remember 4. Live, give, owe, grow. Grow is anything that's like a savings. Your savings, your investments. Live is everything it costs you to live. Everything you spend to do your life. Groceries, pay the bills, get on the bus, buy gas. send money to grandma, have a birthday party. Everything that you spend money on, that's your living. And then your giving, obviously, are you giving money? Do you help somebody, or do you have a commitment? Do you have a Compassion International child somewhere? What do you do that you give money to somebody else that you don't owe it? You don't have to, you just want to give it. Maybe you give money at the church. And then that's your taxes. So don't make it complicated. Don't make it complicated. And when you start right now, you probably can't figure it all out today. You can start today, and over the next few months, 3 to 4 months, you start to get a better idea. My wife says, and she's right, but I would hate to have to do it. Thankfully, she's done this part for me. If you don't know what your budget is and you're not used to setting a budget, the easiest thing is every time you spend money, write it down, get the receipt, put it in an envelope. At the end of the month, go back and sort out all that envelope. Put out all the pieces of paper and say, what? How much did I spend on gas? How many times I went for a cup of coffee? Whatever you did, and it's all there. And then you'll realize there's a lot of stuff you never wrote down. And let me tell you, if you think by not writing it down, it will be secret, it will be a secret, but it'll still undermine your budget. You just got to say, I spent this money. So some people like to use an app. Nacho was here last week. He showed me his app, and they write it all down. The app records it. But hey, if the technology works for you, use it. But a lot of people just think, I've got the app is doing the work. You've got to do the work. You can do it on an app. You can do it on paper. You can write it down in a notebook, or you can just get a receipt every time and put it in a bag and then sort it out. But you got to figure out how much money you're spending and where are you spending it. There's no other way really to get on top of it. And nobody likes to do that. Nobody likes to really talk about it. But if somebody in your family is good at it, then put them in charge. And be willing to say, okay, I had to be willing to say to my wife, she'd be like, did you get a receipt? I was like, quit asking me for the receipt. No, I didn't get a receipt. He doesn't give receipts for that. And then I realized, why am I upset? We're trying to be on this project together. And I was just really annoyed because I didn't do my part. So I had to say, no, you're right. I need to get a receipt. So I didn't get a receipt, so I write it on a piece of paper. I just spent, 432 pesos at the grocery store. And so I write it down. And I didn't want to say it because I was supposed to buy milk, and I bought milk and a candy bar. So I didn't want to say, okay, I spent some money on a candy bar. But the truth is, I spent the money, and I'm trying to figure out where my money goes. That's the only way to fix it. So that makes sense? So you have the one perspective in the middle. God owns it. And there's only 4 things for all the money you have in the world. There's only 4 purposes right now, and that's to live, to give, to owe, or to grow. And so figuring that out. And then the part where the stress is when you don't have margin. And the problems of margin come with our emotions. Like, I've heard so many people's problems, I just can't listen to one more thing. Have you ever felt like that? It's like, don't tell me one more piece of bad news. Or time. They're giving you're out of time. Or you have a deadline and you're just like, I can't believe. I found myself frustrated this week with the organization I work with in the States. And so I sent off a letter, and I did a nice letter. So I've been doing the Emotionally Healthy Spirituality course. So I reflected, I breathed, I reread it, I let Lisa look at it. But I was like, come on, you guys, it shouldn't take 6 weeks to make this decision. And on some kind of information. But I realized all of a sudden I'm feeling stress because my margin went down to nothing. And I have to make a decision. Or I need to pay a bill. And so when we realize we're out of time, we're out of space, we're out of emotional energy, that's where the stress comes in. So what we're going to talk about today is really one of the hardest pieces of managing your money. The rest is like knowing what I need to do. But all of those habits, you can know them, but one thing is to know it. Another thing is to write it down and talk about it. And another thing is to actually do it. To actually do it. So I'm not going to spend any more money on candy bars. No more cheeseburgers for me. I'll just get, just a hamburger, no fries and Coke. To save money and to be more healthy and lose weight. And then I go, I hadn't did a fries and a Coke in a long time, so I'll, do it this time. And so all of those little decisions, that's where it's difficult. So we're going to talk about margin. And I've made 5 steps for you, and we're going to show this on almost all the slides this morning. So you can remember it, memorize it. It's very easy. You can make up your own words. I like these words. So Ron Blue, I think, had some different ones. But let me say one more thing about margin as you're looking at this. Without margin in your life, it can be impossible to follow God's calling on your life. Like you know and you feel in your heart it would be right for you to do a certain thing or to give to a certain project or person or something you feel like you should be doing. But because of your habits, you don't have the space or the margin to do it. And you can't. And the truth is, if you get into debts is like a part of the world that we live in. So I'm not like trying to shame anybody. I've gotten into debts. I've made bad choices. And if you get in, then you need to get out. But when you borrow money and that you can't really pay back and there's high interest and you start to fall behind, you're a slave to that. You don't have room to do anything else. It eats up all of your possibilities. It's a stress. And so following these steps is a way towards freedom and peace. And one of the things I mentioned to give you some freedom and peace, I'm talking about money. And a lot of people are nervous even in a church. They come to the church and they talk about money. I really want to help you. This has helped me. And I told the part about Nate being a missionary and I'm a missionary. I don't make more money if you give more money because I don't get my money from you. So if we could, we'll talk about in the assembly, we'd like to have a second service next year. But if this church grows to 300 people, I don't make any more money because I work for a mission organization, so I'm here as a volunteer. And I work a lot of hours and I do it, but I have a different motivation. So I'm not talking about money so that you'll give it to the church or give it to me. I mean, I'll like that. It'll be great. I'm talking about money really so that you would enjoy the freedom of managing your life better and well and saying, wow, I discovered this truth. And you'll go on to be successful in the areas you need to be. But there's basically 5 steps here. Everybody in here is on one of these 5 steps. And everybody you meet financially is on one of these 5 steps. And so you can go home and talk to somebody and your organization is on one of these 5 steps. And your country, everything. These are great, just practical steps. So the first one says, struggling. Struggling. I'll just read the steps. You know what? Go back one, Gabriel. Gabriel's great. These guys that do the PowerPoint, I tell them, if I get stuck and I'm just inspired in talking, go ahead and move it forward, and that gives me a signal. Keep going, John. But I want to tell you what they are. Struggling, surviving, stable, secure, and surplus. And almost everybody's on the bottom 2 steps. But the good news is we're not here to compare ourselves with anybody else. This is not about how much money you have. This is about how much margin, or some people like to use the word capacity. How much margin or capacity you have. It's not about the amount of money. And so somebody who's a millionaire can be struggling. Why? Because the struggling means that your money doesn't get to the end of the month. And you're struggling every single month. You're trying to get to the end. And you're like, I'm almost out of gas, but I don't have any gas money until next month. Or you have to put it on the credit card or do something. And so you're struggling to pay the bills. And the only way out of that is to eliminate some high interest debt. The only way. And so that's what I was showing before on the pie. All of those things are together. The way you think in your heart, what your beliefs are, and how you've distributed the pie, how you do your budget and see it. And then once you see it, this is how you make margin. When you're surviving, if you're surviving, that means you're the person, you're able with some effort, you're paying all your bills. You're making all your commitments every month, or we say a month, but maybe over 6 months or at the end of the year, because it doesn't count if you make your bills this month and next month you can't. This means you're struggling. You're not able to get to the end. And so surviving means, yeah, you're covering all the bases, but you're not really able to get ahead. You're not making any savings. And so the only way to get out of that is to create some emergency fund. And you take some margin, you say, here's for when the emergency comes, and the emergency will always come. There will always be an emergency, so you will always need that fund. That's not your fund for your retirement or something else. That's like for your emergency. Somebody gets sick and you're like, oh, wow, got to pay the doctor. Something happens, I don't know, get a flat tire, and you didn't realize how much tires cost, and then you go and they say, well, you really need to get 2 tires. You can't get 1, you need 2. You're like, are you kidding me? And so you're in your emergency fund. How much your emergency fund is depends on you. I don't know. How much money, what are the kinds of emergencies that you have in your life? Because I know some people are saying, well, how much do I need in my emergency fund? You have to decide that. I can't tell you. You say, what kind of emergencies happen in your life that cause you to go back to you can't make it to the end of the month? Like they disrupt your whole budget. And some people, maybe it's, I'm not even going to give you illustrations. You need to figure that out. How much do you need? Okay, so struggling, surviving, stable. Stable means you're paying your bills, you're making some savings, and you're able to say, you know what, we're going to have to replace the refrigerator probably in the next 6 months or the year. And so you're able to start putting a little money in the refrigerator envelope that says, okay, this is going to be for when we get our refrigerator. So it's not going to surprise me in 6 months when all of a sudden it just dies and then I figure out what I'm going to do. You're able to think ahead because there's that little extra capacity, that little extra margin. Secure means now you're actually saving. The person that is secure is paying their bills, they have the emergency fund, they're having some short-term savings, and they're also saving for long-term goals. They're saying, you know what, one of these days I'd like to get out of this job and start a little business. Or I have a hobby on the side I'd like to do. Or I would like to support this project. Or I would like to, my kids are young and I'm hoping to one day be able to pay for half their college. Or whatever kind of goals you have long term. And I want to save money so that I can remodel the bathroom. And those are things like 5 years from now or down the road. And you're able to do that and put money away. And surplus means you're meeting your life-term goals. And most people don't get there, but some people do. You're like, I'm really achieving the goals that I set, and I'm able to do the things that I hope to do. And, so let's go on and talk about this. There are 6 common long-term goals. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. And you can take a picture if you want, but 6 common goals that people have. Because goals are important. If you don't have long-term goals, remember it's one of the 5 habits. Spend less than you earn, eliminate the high-interest debt, make a plan for getting some margin, set long-term goals, and give generously. How am I doing, Florencia? Too fast? Good? Thanks. So go back, Gabriel. That is too fast. But, wow. So some 6 long-term goals, for example, would be to be debt-free. And I told you the story, maybe it was I don't know if it's in the little finance workshop we did on Thursday or if it was here last Sunday, but I said something about my mom. And finally, like at 72, she said, I was debt-free. I had paid everything off and I'm never going back. I'm never borrowing another dime from anybody, but I'd paid for the house and then I remortgaged the house to help the kids and had done all the different things. So 72, she and my dad, something like that, they were like debt-free. And she was like, woo, the greatest thing. And she likes to give money away. She gives money away to a lot of people. And sometimes the kids are like, hey, what are you doing? But that's what she likes to do. And it's her money. And so she's achieved that place. She doesn't have, no one would look at my mom and think she has a lot of money. But she has contentment. And she has peace. And she's doing the things she wants to do. It's not about amount. It's about finding peace with where you are. So debt-free is a big one. Lifestyle desires. Some people say, hey, I'd love to be able to take a vacation for a month every year. So that's crazy. Well, you pick your own thing. What would you like to do? You like to go on a cruise. You like to go camping. You like to have a better car. You just like to have a car. Whatever your lifestyle desire is, then that's a long-term goal. Or family provision. Maybe you look ahead and you say, you know what? I think I'm the one that's going to be having to take care of my mom. And I wonder if I have a place in my house. What am I going to do? And you think about that and you make a goal. Or maybe you're part of someone else. Christopher shared a story like everyone in his community has a long-term goal to buy a piece of land where they can build a church. Because in their community, they came down and they destroyed the church that you guys had. And so it's like, how are we going to work together? And it's a long-term goal. Or to be financially independent. To donate. Or to begin a business. So having goals that are out there in front of you is really very powerful. And for some of you, that's obvious because you've practiced setting goals and you know that you put a goal and you say, this is the direction I want to go. It's amazing the power to help you focus and move along. And so, yeah, it's a lot of information I'm giving you, but since we've been talking about it, if you're new, you don't realize we've already been talking about this for 3 weeks, so I'm hoping you're putting it together. But how do you make a faith goal? Because I asked the question, how do you demonstrate faith? And a faith goal is for someone that says, you know what, I'm really struggling. I'm down here on, I said, most people are on the first 2 steps. But don't compare yourself to anybody else. Because it doesn't matter. Peace does not come from comparing. So, well, I wish I was that person. I wish I had their job. You know what? Wherever you go and whatever job you have, you still have you. You will still be there. And most of the problems and the difficulties in my life are me. It's the way that I think. It's the way that I respond. Most of us here cannot change our circumstances next week. The circumstances we're in, maybe we can change them a year from now or a few years from now. But right now, the circumstances you have, that's what you have to deal with. And the question is, how will you respond? And if we blame the economy, and we blame the boss, and we blame other things, I mean, that can make us feel good, and it may be partially true. There's some bad economies, there's some bad bosses, there's some awful jobs, but you can't change those people. But what you can do is say, where am I? What am I going to do about it? What will I do with what I have? And so faith goals is saying, I am really struggling right now. I have so much debt. I can never get out of debt. And you say, you know what? I'm going to set a goal. I'm going to ask for help. I'm going to figure out where I am. I'm going to get some advice. And I'm going to pray and write and reflect and say, how can I get out? Could God really guide me? Could I change the way that I think and have some new goals and some new advice? Like when I used to, I'm being honest. I would tell my wife, she said, did you get a receipt? I'm like, why do people have to be so uptight about a receipt? As though my wife were the problem, and I was the problem. Like, why wouldn't I want to have a receipt and know how I spent the money? Or whatever. I mean, we could talk all about that. It would be a counseling thing, but we've worked through it. So I have been in places and times in my life where I could not pay the bills. I've been in times and places where when I was a kid, where there wasn't money to eat. You know what? If you resolve everything, today you can resolve everything with a credit card. Say, you know what? I'll just buy it. Let me tell you one of the secrets of being a Christian. If you resolve your problem by borrowing money, you lose the opportunity to see how God might provide. And you'd think I was telling crazy stories, but God really provides for people in some amazing ways. And when I was a kid, we had a fairly humble situation, and it was normal. I never thought about it as being poor. But I knew that, for example, we didn't have a car unless somebody gave us a car, and people gave my dad a car. It's like, man, you got 5 kids and you can't go anywhere, so here's a car. And then we were really happy. Or sometimes somebody literally there would be an envelope at the door. And I always thought, sometimes I was embarrassed. I didn't want to tell anybody, things like that. But I discovered that part of it was that's the way my parents lived. And one of the reasons I thought we were poor and they have money is they always put their giving first. And they gave to other people. And so my mom been telling me all my life, she says, giving is money's just a tool. The money is just like it flows through. It's not supposed to stop with me. And so I give and I receive and I just, trusting the Lord. And if you've never been around a person like that, you say they're just a fanatic. They just don't know. That's not realistic. I couldn't do that. Well, I'm not asking you to do that, but I'm asking you to say, hey, open your mind and realize God can guide you. He can provide. And usually it's not from today till tomorrow. You say, oh, John said, so I'm going to pray and somebody's going to push an envelope under the door and pay my bills. And you know why? Because we'll keep living the way we're living. And the reason we have the situation we're in is because of the choices we've made. And what God would really like to do if he's guiding you is help you become a different person. And if you don't have a crisis, you'd never ask for help. And if you didn't have a problem, you'd never be willing to say, wow, maybe I need to do things differently. So open your mind and say, hey, I'll pray about this. I'll write some things down. I'll create a goal and ask for help. Don't be embarrassed to tell somebody. Find a friend or your spouse or somebody and say, hey, I need some help with this. And Ephesians 3:20. Somebody know what that says? I don't have my Bible here. Ephesians 3:20. Now, God who is able to do immeasurably more than all you can ask or imagine, or far above all that you can ask or think. And so God is able to do more than you can imagine. Now, most of us want to imagine things that God can do for us, but we don't want to make any changes. We really don't want to make a change. We'd like to do it the way we do it, but have a better result. And life doesn't work that way. Not in the church, not in work, anything. If you do what you do, you'll just get what you've got. It's a great quote. You've heard it before. Is that translatable for you, Florencia? Awesome. If you just do what you do, you get what you got. So let's go on. So I think we're almost done here. You're struggling, or you're surviving, or you're stable. Don't make the mistake of struggling today and say, okay, I want to be at surplus by March. Like my New Year goal will be to go to surplus. If you're going to climb the ladder, you got to go like one step at a time. Maybe you're going to win the lottery, but if you have your bad habits, you'll spend the money and it'll be gone. You'll just get bigger debts. And so bigger salaries, you'll have bigger debts. If you don't change your thinking and your habits, it won't matter how much you make, you'll be in the same kinds of problems and stress. It's not about amount, it's about the margin. And so in all the different areas of life. So you're struggling, your problem probably has to do with some debts. And you're going to figure out how to eliminate that, and someone can help you. And you're barely surviving, and you say, I've been doing this for 20 years, John doesn't understand. Well, I may not understand the details of your situation, but these are principles, and they'll work for everybody anywhere. And it'll start, you spend less than you earn, you start eliminating debt, and little by little you're going to find your margin increases, and you start to move up. And you can spend your life, and that's okay. If you spend your life getting from struggling to stable, you know what? The choices you make will change the lives of so many people around you. It's not just you. It's all the people around you. It's all the people that come after you. It's all the people that are learning from you. No, I'm not going to do that one again. So, I have a closing remark here, and we'll be done. So if you have a lack of margin in your financial life, today, just take some time by yourself and ask yourself why. And don't be hard on yourself. Really, there's not like judgment. Like everybody's trying to get a little bit more ahead. It's like a normal thing. And all of the culture and all of our lifestyle is usually pushing. Most people sitting around, most of us in here right now, are trying to figure out how to have a little less stress and manage what we have a little better. So there's no shame in having some debts and having some problems. But you begin to ask, what are my priorities? How do my activities match my priorities? Am I making decisions based on my larger goals? How can I eliminate some of the low quality activities or spending patterns that are taking away my margin? Like I always make the joke about hamburgers. I really don't eat that many hamburgers, but I did for a long time in my life. And so that was always my thing. I said, I'm going to go get a hamburger. And I learned I ate a lot of hamburgers because I was stressed. And I used to work and all the time. Like I was worked 80 or 90 hours. And whenever I felt bad, I'd get a hamburger and a Coke. And so, that's like the wrong thing. I didn't need a hamburger and I didn't need to spend the money and everything was against it, but that's just what I did. So I have to go back and say, what am I doing? What's going on inside me? And so just take some time and review and accept your reality and commit to a couple of action steps. There's only one real answer to debt. It's to spend less than you earn consistently over time, changing your habits. And so there are a lot of reasons we get into debt. And so just trying to understand why did I get to where I am? Is it a family thing? Is it a me thing? Is it a pressure thing? What is it? And ask somebody for help. And if I can help you, I'll be glad to. But this is great stuff. It can change your life. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, you know all of our hearts and all of our situations. And money creates a crisis when we need money and we don't have it, when there's a problem and we can't pay for it, or when we've made a choice that got us into a big problem. And maybe some things happened and it wasn't even our choice. There was an accident or there was an illness or something happened and we're just so far behind and we can't see a way out. Or we're locked into a job situation and it just seems impossible. So Lord, I know that for you there is nothing impossible. And I pray that you would give us faith to believe and the courage to ask for help and the wisdom as we try to move forward so that each person here could experience the joy of giving and the peace of living with contentment and the adventure of setting goals and over time beginning to experience how that moves us forward and other people as well in life. So guide us and direct us as we trust in you. And our benediction, the words of Paul, may the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust in him, so that you may overflow with hope by the power of the Holy Spirit. Amen.